Okay, well, a very good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining our session. What we're going to do over the next 25 minutes or so is take you through 5 key and simple website MOT checks to just ensure that your website vehicle is performing and ready to go for 2021. The good thing is the steps that we're going to take you through, you can carry out most of these in-house, so at no expense to you. So you don't really need web experts or external companies to help you do that. I'm going to take you through the first 3 steps, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Mark, who's going to walk you through the last 2, so steps 4 and 5. If you have any questions as we go through, could I please ask that you put them in the session chat? So you'll see a panel on the right-hand side of your screen with a couple of choices there. If you click on session, and then as we go through and your questions come in, we can either respond to them at that point or we can deal with them at the end of our presentation. Okay, so starting with step 1 then, this is quite important because we have seen a lot of changes this year. So consequently, your business goals may have changed, or indeed they may have changed anyway to focus on other areas of export trade or other areas of your business for 2021. So step 1, does your website align with your business goals for 2021? And really there are 3 main areas that you may be developing. So we'll look at those in a little bit more detail. So first of all, the area of objectives, have these changed at all? Inspired by COVID, etc.? Is your message still on point? Do you have a COVID message on your website to say that you're trading is normal as it has been, or have there been any changes to it? Is your audience still the same? So what we've seen certainly in the past 6 to 8 months is that businesses target audiences may have changed. They may have gone from a B2B type model or a B2C type model, or even a mixture of both. And also, is the engagement process still the same? So for the service and B2B businesses amongst you, where you might typically attend trade shows, perhaps the process for keeping in contact with your overseas partners has changed. So all those new objectives, if you like, for 2021 need to be reflected on your website. The other area is global impression. So at the moment, you could be just targeting your domestic market, and now you want to start targeting international markets through your websites. So just start to give a global impression in terms of, are your contact details internationalized? Can they get hold of you easily from overseas, bearing in mind time zones, etc., language differences? Do you say on your website where you sell overseas? So maybe you've got a network of global distributors, or you're selling on e-marketplace platforms such as Amazon US or something like that. And if your website is there to generate leads for you, so not actually sell online, are there adequate calls to action? And ideally there should be one on each page that helps your website visitors to do on your website what you'd like them to do. And then the third area in this step is your domain structure. So maybe you are already targeting overseas markets through your website and you want to do that bigger and better, but you're still sat on a .co.uk domain, which essentially could be restricting global traffic to your website. Global traffic will find your website, but if it's structured internationally, then you will have more potential for international traction. So this is something that we can sort of talk you through and help you do at a later stage, but just to plant that seed for now and bear in mind that if you are targeting international markets through your website, your domain structure will likely need to be in accordance with that. And then moving on to step 2, is your website compliant? Now, 2 reasons for this. First of all, we do have legal obligations to show certain things on our website. I'll talk you through those in a moment. But also, when visitors come to our website, they need to feel safe. They need to know that they've landed on a secure website, and in turn that generates trust, which then can lead to loyalty, which can ultimately then lead to purchases and good reviews. And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. So here are just some of the areas that you need to have on your website. Some of them are legally compliant, others are not necessarily a need to have, but a nice to have. So starting with the business details, obviously company name, registration number where it's registered, and your VAT number. Even if you're not selling online through your website, your VAT number still needs to be on your website. If you are selling online, then the consumer protection elements need to be on your website as well. So that's information before an order is placed, and also information for after the order has been placed, such as a confirmation has to be sent within 24 hours, etc. And also assurance that your goods and services are of satisfactory quality and fit for purpose. That also needs to be displayed on your website in your terms and conditions, perhaps. And then the policies, because you are taking details, even if you are a lead generation website, you are taking email addresses, etc. So we need to have a privacy policy, a cookie disclosure, and also a disclaimer or terms and conditions of using your website in terms of what they are allowed to do with your content. Okay, so moving on to step 3. Now, this is quite an important part of a website, and it's an area of activity that never really stops. And for several businesses that we've worked with, they might have set their website up a good few years ago, but they haven't for a long time revisited their page titles, descriptions, and their SEO friendly URLs as well. When it comes to organic search listings, these are the 3 main things that appear in the search results. So the titles, descriptions, and URLs. And when you think that Google deals with 40,000 searches per second, it's really important to make your listings stand out from the crowd to help with click-through rate, or CTR as it's known in the SEO world. And search engines actually use this CTR as a ranking factor as well. So let's delve a little bit deeper into the titles, descriptions, and URLs and how they should look on your website. So here's a screen grab of a search result. So you can see there the titles at the top in blue or purple, and then the green is the URL, and then the black text there is the description. And just going a little bit deeper into those. So the page titles, these are really how they should be. So there needs to be ideally at least one keyword in each title, and the number of characters you have for your title is up to 60. So keep within that, and avoid, where possible, stop words. So that's ands and buts, which Google doesn't really look at. It just looks at the main words, or the keywords, if you like. Each page title should be unique. So if you've got the same title for several pages of your website, I would probably revisit those and have a look at making them a bit more unique for each page. And also create attention grabbing titles as well, because at the end of the day, your human visitors, if you like, are going to click through from those search results. So those are your page titles, and now moving on to the descriptions as well. So unlike 60 characters, you now have 160 characters to do your description, and this is certainly enough to make for a compelling description. Bear in mind that sometimes the rules on the number of characters does change. So this 160 was at one point not too long ago 320, and now it's reverted back to 160. So it's important to keep your eye on that as well. Again, like the page titles, write a unique one for each page, and don't stuff it with keywords. It needs to read naturally. Think about the visitor. Would you click through reading your description? Because at the end of the day, that's what you want them to do. And moving on now to, I'll just actually point out here that there are a couple of, well, there's more than a couple, I've just highlighted a couple here. There are free tools on the web where you can actually go in using one of these links and put in your website address, and it will analyze for nothing, no cost, what your titles and descriptions look like. So rather than you sit there and count every single character, this does it very quickly for you to see if they're over, under, and suggestions as well for how you could make those better. So moving on now to SEO friendly URLs. So that was the green text that I showed you in a previous slide. Now this is what Google looks at, and so using a keyword in there will tell Google what the page is about. It's important to keep it as simple as possible, and in fact shorter URLs do tend to rank better in search engines as well. Equally, a mixture of lowercase and uppercase confuses search engines, so best to keep with lowercase letters. And if you are using hyphens or underscores to separate words, then probably hyphens is the best way to go. And again, like with the page titles and descriptions, there are free tools to check how SEO friendly your URLs are as well. So again, clicking on either one of these, I've put 2 up there. There are plenty more out there. And here's an example of one of them. So you put in your you put in your website address, and it will just very quickly scan all of your website URLs and come up with an analysis here. And I know you probably can't see the writing. Let me talk you through it where I've ringed. So the green means that all your URLs have passed, and indeed this website has got 100% pass rate on it. The red are fails and the orange are warnings. So a little bit like an MOT, if you like. And with the failed and warnings, this tool will also provide suggestions on how to get them better, get your URLs more SEO friendly. Okay, so just before I hand over to Mark, I've kind of cantered through this a little bit. We are on hand at the end if you've got any questions, and of course after today as well, if you need to get in touch with DIT, we can as digital trade advisors, we can kind of help guide you and advise you through your online journey as well. But just to sum up the 3 steps that I've just covered now. So step 1, make sure that your website, the message that you're projecting and everything else on there aligns with your business goals for 2021. If you are wanting to give a global impression, so you're just dipping your toes in international waters through your website, there's some very simple things you can do just to give your company more of a global impression. And of course, that ever important domain structure, if you are targeting specific geographical regions or countries through your website, which again we can help with that at a later point. Okay, and then step 2 is your website compliant. Remember that the human visitor needs to feel that your website's trustworthy, but also many of those areas are a legal requirement on our website, such as business details, consumer protection details, and protection policies as well. And then step 3, when did you last check your basic SEO? And I'm saying basic because SEO is quite a big landscape, but if you're doing these initial basic things right, you're definitely on the right road to success here. So your page titles, page descriptions, and your SEO friendly URLs as well. Okay, well, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mark now, that's going to talk you through steps 4 and 5. Over to you, Mark.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. There we go. Slide there for us. So thank you, Susan. Those are the first 3 steps we've covered, thinking about our journey through our MOT of our website, ready for export. We'll move on to step 4 now. This is thinking about basic technical checks for SEO. There's some quite important factors that I'll cover here that influence how the search engine results page is built up, and a lot of this is thinking about how the search engines rate or look and feel how your website's working. So almost looking at the positive or negative perhaps even, but the positive side of your site. How's it performing? How well is it now rated? What's it doing? So the three things we'd think about there, we think about site speed, mobile responsiveness or friendliness of your mobile experience with website, and your domain authority, or how well your domain ranks against others. So we'll think about site speed first. Site speed is important because thinking of a user journey and looking at how people interact with our website, if your web pages take a long time to load, people don't sit around and wait for it to happen. They go away. And we refer to this as bounce rate in a raw sense, or in a greater picture of what things are happening. So they bounce away from the site. Things aren't good when people have to wait, and people get bored and they move away and don't interact. So let's look at site speed first. And we test site speed. There's quite a few free tools out there, and this is one that I use a lot here. It's called GT Metrics. It's a speed checker, which is, again, you just put your URL into, and it analyzes the site there. This particular tool's analyzed 700 million pages before. So it's a very, very competent and well-used tool that's around in the SEO world, and it is free of charge. So you put URL into the test button there, and we look and we get a result, and we get a B on performance for this particular website. So we're rating A to F, A being the best, F being not so good. So good result for this particular site there. And what GT Metrics is good for as well, and I'm not plugging this site, a lot of these sites give you these recommendations. You get a recommendation page which tells us what we need to do. So looking onto the next page there, you see you've got a list of actions which is shown to your left, medium or mid-low or low priority, but also further reading. It's quite a clever little bit of kit then, this particular tool, giving you extra work to do, but then it lets you fix the issues, and then it lets your site speed up, which helps the user journey. There are other free tools around. I'll just show you one more, which does a similar job, because GT Metrics is based in Canada, so it gives you an export window, we might say, as an export customer would see your site. That you can set this next one to test your site speed from in London, which could be important for us. You want to make sure your domestic message is working correctly as well. So this is a site result for a London-based browse, and it gives the rating a C again, A to F, F being not so good. So a middle result there, decent result there for this particular site. So we've looked at site speed, we've thought about site speed, and you'll agree with that. You'll come to a website and click on, and nothing happens, or it's not loading correctly. There's only so long you're going to wait. Most people say it's around 3 seconds or so is your area of intensity where you think, yes, I'm going to sit and wait. So it's quite important we get our pages loaded up quickly. And this is all about your MOT there, thinking about what I'm going to get my site doing to make it worthy of my users and make it really perform and do the job right. So let's move on now. Let's think about mobile friendliness and how a site works for mobile optimization. Now, for the last 3 or 4 years, your mobile use has hovered around 50% of all users on search. So it's important that we optimize and let the site work well on a mobile device. This particular test has said this site's not working so well, but it's not a big fault. It gives you some ideas of what to do. And this is the Google's own free test again. I like to keep plugging these free tests for us. And it just says that text is too small and clickable elements might be too close. So it's just a matter about thinking about how you present your pages. And also, as the pages scale down, we can have different commands in our code, which you may need to get somebody in for to give you a hand. But of course, a lot of platforms as well have plugins, and plugins will help you set menus and page structure through their information that comes and injected onto your page. So Shopify, for instance, or WooCommerce, etc., will have a plugin that can help you optimize a page for mobile friendliness. So if you do a test and it's not working, and you've got those kind of platforms, you go to a plugin and that gives you a solution. So that can be done in-house by yourself quite easily there. So that's the speed and the mobile friendliness. Let's think about our domain authority. Now, domain authority is going to be a matter of how different search engines rate your site based on how it interacts with the user, but also how people have, we'll say, voted almost. It's how where people have linked or sites have linked to you saying this this page is good. There's things on here I need to see. And this is where I start thinking about content as well. There's probably nothing worse than an empty site that has no content on it for people to actually interact with. So you've got to start thinking about making your site sticky almost. And that's probably a good word to think about there, where you've got information on your web pages which targeted to an export market or targeted to an export city, etc., or targeted just to an area you want to interact with, as in a customer group or a particular product area or service. And you start putting information on about that, and then of course people link to it and they start saying, yeah, this is good. And this is what the search engines are thinking about and looking for. And so this particular scrape I've done here that gives us a result actually rates this site quite highly. I think you're out of 100 here on the domain rating, so 40 out of 100 is good score. Good score, it's not bad. Although bearing in mind something like Facebook is 98 out of 100, so not as good as the big boys, but yeah, it's a good score. You've got 232 linking websites there, and nearly 2,500 backlinks. So lots of positive votes, and that's helping your ranking. Google may also use other factors, for instance, like bounce rate, but of course then we're thinking about the site speed and your mobile friendliness as well. So you bring all these three factors together, all of a sudden you see a picture coming together where we've got, you make the site perform well, it loads quickly, it works well on mobile, and also you've got lots of content on the website. These three things come together now, and that you check how you're doing with those, with these free tools, and give yourself an idea of what your site's doing and how it's serving your users. Are you getting your message out there correctly? So we've looked at 4 points now going through. So we've thought about planning, we've thought about legal steps, etc., and getting your site compliant. Then we've looked at the 2 SEO stages where we're thinking about checking basic page SEO, then looking at some tests and technical SEO. Let's move on to step 5. And step 5 is thinking about how now we're going to bring all this together. So we need to analyze everything, because there's no point performing all these tasks and doing all these jobs and making our site perform and optimize and then doing nothing about it in terms of measuring and benchmarking what we have. So we're going to think about web analytics. Then let's think about the touch points we have with people's journey and how many times they interact with you as they go through the website journey that you're going to present to them. And then last of all, a little idea I'm quite big on, which is social listening and the clues that social listening can give us. So let's look at web analytics, quickly move into that. Google Analytics is really a point of truth in this game, the analytics game. We've got, maybe hard to see some of these figures, but you see my highlighted yellow line on the top. That highlights what you see standard on all Google pages, analytics pages, where you're looking at users, new users, etc. That's a standard message throughout. But you've got on the left-hand side, you see me yellow mark in there. You have filters and different channels applied. This is quite a basic report asking us to say where people come from, if they come from organic traffic or Bing, etc. But we can further refine this, and we're thinking of export, of course. So let's think about countries and where people have come from when we're visiting our site and what they're interacting with. We've got a filter on the left. I've highlighted that if you can't read it. It says location. So we've picked a location filter. I've also selected another filter for country that's highlighted to the top. But of course, we're still seeing that standard message across, which is how many users, sessions, bounce rates. But now it's split by country, and no surprise there, United States is the top. Often the case in these sort of reports, United States is your big boy when it comes to browse traffic on a lot of these sort of reports. But further refinement can be made again. We can keep going down and down and down. So we can now then say, oh, let's look what city somebody came from. So we've got country and city now split through, looking at this same report. So this is the same basic information. That's never changed on that top bar. But we've got now 2 filters applied. And there's a third filter again that's still available to us. And I've highlighted that to the top right if you can't see, but it's that yellow area. There's a third filter where I could then say, I only want to see the United States, or only wish to see Canada, etc., depending on what your export goals are. Right, so that's analytics covered. And I think Google Analytics, if you get that cracked and you have that in hand, you're really done well there, and that's what you need to be au fait with. But moving on to touch points. If we imagine that a customer user will interact and touch our message, our journey on the website about 8 times on average throughout, you've got lots of different points where somebody comes in and interacts with our site and how they get there and what they do. It's never as simple. I just looked and went and etc. There's lots of different things goes on. Let's think about those different places where people come in and start trying to understand how that affects your message, what you're trying to get the message out there to the user. So you've got your direct traffic, that's when you already knew your domain. You've got organic traffic where they found you in a Google or a Bing search, etc. Paid advertising and all these other sources that come together. You then got social traffic and social conversion paths. People coming via a social message. Referral people being referred to you, even word of mouth, old tech like word of mouth or vouchers. Affiliate traffic referred by a discount site maybe, or a voucher site, etc. Email, use of your database and emails going out, and even really old school print and banners that still influences people and brings them through to your site. Think about how that plots out. Don't cut any of those out, bring as much as you can in, and of course analytics will tell you as best it can where people have come from. Most of those touch points, other than print and banners, will interact in some way with your analytics as well. Final point then, so we've got the touch points covered, and we're thinking about how we'll analyze and look at what's happened. So we'll move on to social listening. This is where probably the newer part of all this journey, or the newer technology side. We're going to think with social listeners, we want to understand what our users are saying about us in the social world. And so much goes on there now, that we've really had to take this into account. And we can see this in analytics, so we can monitor what's happened. And also platforms like Facebook give you also their own information on what's happened there as well. But it lets you monitor and influence positively the social chatter. You need to be part of that. You need to be influencing what's going on and guide it towards a positive aspect towards you. And you're going to have to use tools, I think, for this. It's quite a big job. There is so much going on, but there are, of course, lots of tools out there to do that. But also, I would say one thing, you need to be open to new channels and new exposure. Don't ignore new social channels. You need to get on board and you need to be part of new journeys that are happening, because your users will be. So let's have a quick look at some tools that we can use. We've got one that jumps to mind straight away, and that's BuzzSumo. Here I've put a search into their query analysis, their content marketing, and via Facebook. So this is looking at any mention of content marketing on Facebook everywhere over the last 2 years. So massive report. Those 4 headings that's showing there, just the top of that. So that's the power of that particular search. And it can look at most shared, it can look at trending now, it can analyze backlinks, etc., people's linking to sites. It's a very clever little tool there. It is mainly paid for. It's going to give some strength of that, I'm afraid, but it's a very powerful tool. The second one I'll mention, it's a very common testing device we use in SEO, SEMrush, and that has a projects border. It also has a left navigation with the same links, but projects brings them all together. And you've got a social media tracker, then you've got a brand monitoring tracker, and you put competitors into that, and it will analyze what those competitors have done and benchmark you again. So you get performance, you get that MOT, you get that sense of what's happening and how well you're doing. So we've covered quite a few points there. Let's just think about a quick resume of what's been said. In point 1, we talked about planning your next steps. Then we thought about ensuring your legal compliance. Then we looked at checking your basic SEO. Then we thought about your technical SEO, the measurement. And then last of all, we said analyze everything, because you've got to know what's happened to then know where you're going to go. We're going to get all our ducks in order, as it were. We're going to do all the basic steps, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're going to look at what's happened and draw that together. I hope that helps with your export journey. That's my presentation finished. And Susan, thank you. I'll pass over. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mark. That was great. Okay, so there aren't any immediate questions in the chat box, and I'm mindful that it's 4 minutes past 12. So if you do have any questions after today, you will be sent the recording for this session and details of how to contact us after the event today. I would just like to give you some instruction now from our events manager, because the keynote speech will begin at 10 past 12, so that's in about 6 minutes. And what you need to do to get to that is go to the stage area on the left-hand side panel to view that presentation. So Without further ado, I wish you a very pleasant rest of the day and rest of the conference, and I look forward to perhaps speaking with you again at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.